Let this be a lesson to never say never, especially on the internet. Hello YouTube, Dave here again. So today I want to talk about D&D 3.5. For years now, I made it pretty clear that I felt like I was done with D&D 3.5. I sort of had my fill with it. I ran it for 12 straight years on a near weekly basis with, a few, instances of missing a session here or there. I don't think there was ever more than a 3-week period that went by without running a game. And again, for 12 years, running it pretty, consistently for a system that only lasted for 8 years, I really felt like I had done everything that I could do or wanted to do with the D&D 3.5 system. And I've made videos where I'd said, very, plainly or bluntly that I was done DMing D&D 3.5. I was always open to the idea of playing D&D 3.5, but as far as DMing it goes, I just wasn't interested. I just done it too much, and the things that I found frustrating with the system, they just sort of built up and built up and built up, which 12 years of doing something will lead to that. But I guess the emotions have calmed. And I'm kind of been feeling some nostalgia for D&D 3.5. So I just wanted to make a video because I guess just to walk through the process of what sort of led to me coming back to the system that for all intents and purposes, I was really content with, or I felt like I was content with being done. And I don't know, it's just sort of get the thoughts out there, and there will be something in it for someone watching this video. Hopefully, we'll sort of get to that in a moment. But yeah, so like I said, for 12 years, I'd run this version of the game. And, I don't want to say, I would never say that D&D 3.5 was a bad game, because I ran it for 12 years. So you don't do something for that long without enjoying it. The problem is just that, there were things about it that were kind of weaknesses in the system. And the more you run it, the longer you run it, the more they sort of tend to accumulate. I will probably very shortly, when I start running 3.5 again, reacquaint myself with things like, weapon-based damage reduction and spell resistance, but, that's a bridge we'll cross when we get to it. So I guess, like I said, I've been thinking about this for a little while now, because it's actually been a few months that I've been considering this. And I just wanted to walk myself back through what really led to, the shields around 3.5 and never wanting to run 3.5, just, to bring those shields down and to actually start getting excited about the prospect of running another D&D 3.5 game. So it actually began a couple of years ago. Actually, it might be more than that now, because time really flies. Especially as you're, getting up in years like I am. So a few years ago, I made a video playlist called The Goblin Test. It was something that I'd heard about, and the concept was basically taking a first level fighter with basic standardized equipment from edition to edition and putting them in a series of one-on-one fights with a never-ending line of goblins. Basically, they would fight. If a goblin's defeated, the next one would step up and take its place. It was like an assembly line of goblin slaughter. The fighter would keep their cumulative damage, and essentially you would see how many goblins you could slay before the fighter would actually be knocked unconscious. And you would do this a number of times to get like sort of an average number. And I actually made first level characters for each of the editions, I think with the exception of D&D Basic, although I want to say I went back and did that later. Had them fight, and I ran like 10 times, for example, and just to see, what they could possibly do. But making the 3.5 character was sort of like the first crack in, the foundation of the I'm never going to run 3.5 monument, because I found myself really enjoying flipping through the book and feeling nostalgic about making a 3rd edition character. Because at that point, the last time I ever got to play as a player and make a character was for 3rd edition D&D. It's not entirely true. It was actually Pathfinder 1e, But the strongest memories of making characters for me at that point was for D&D Third Edition. I actually remember making a first level orc barbarian the day that the 3.0 player's handbook released. I went over to my friend's house. He had the book. I got it like a month later, I think it was, and yeah, it was just a ton of fun to make the character. So going through and doing that process was sort of nostalgic. The other thing that really started getting me sort of weakening my defenses against running not wanting to run 3.5 again was the channel, the Blue Dragon Network. That's what it's called now. It's gone through a couple of name changes over the years, but just watching videos on that channel because like they really enjoy D&D 3.5, and they were making, like John and his wife Ava were making a series of videos sort of discussing D&D 3.5 and like tutorial stuff, or things to sort of introduce you to the system. And I actually really enjoyed watching those videos. And I don't really watch a lot of videos on YouTube, like RPG stuff, as much as I used to, but I really enjoyed watching all those videos. I also really enjoyed watching them do their video with their 3.5 or third edition collection and just sort of discussing all the books. And again, every time they showed a new one, even though I've got, like, I think all of them except for, I think they may have had one or two that I didn't. But just watching, them produce a book and then talking about it, really, reminded me of what it felt like to get that book when I first, added it to my collection, when I first got it from my local game store. So that was another sort of weakening of the defenses. During the pandemic, when we went to our first lockdown here in Nova Scotia, we're currently in the middle of our, I don't want to say lockdown, but we're in the middle of our like second serious restriction in terms of like businesses and stuff like that. But during the first one, I started really getting into collecting First Edition Pathfinder. And if you're not aware, First Edition Pathfinder is very, very closely it's based off of the 3.5 Open Gaming License, but it is very, very similar to the overall 3.5 rule set. They did change a few things, like they combined a few skills, they added a few like options that you could choose from. So they definitely improved the 3.5 formula, but the two are very, very similar. Like you could run a Pathfinder module using 3.5 D&D books with very little in terms of having to modify things, and vice versa, as far as that goes. So they're very, very similar systems, but just collecting those books, looking through them, again, sort of started to break down the defenses that I had built up around the idea of ever wanting to run 3.5 again. I guess the final nail in the coffin, so to speak, came when I started doing my Age of Worms review series, because the Age of Worms was the final third edition 3.5 D&D game that I ever ran. I finished it in, I think it was, when was it? It was either late 2012 or early 2013. I can't remember exactly when it was, because it's been a while. It's been like, almost 10 years at this point. But that was the last D&D 3.5 game I ever ran. And at that point, when I finished it, I felt like I was done. I felt comfortable with the fact that I'd run it as much as I felt like I wanted to at that point. But when I started doing that video, when I did my first review for the Whispering Cairn, I realized that, I was planning on reviewing the Savage Tide Adventure Path, which was the third and final adventure path from the physical print run of Dungeon Magazine, which was in the hands of Paizo at the time. When the magazines were canceled, Paizo still had a ton of subscribers, and they had ideas for the next stuff that they were going to do, because I'm not going to say they were blindsided, but I don't think they got a huge amount of heads up. Like they extended the print runs of the magazine to let them finish their series. But yeah, I think it still kind of came a little bit out of left field. So that's why they went and decided to create Pathfinder. They were already releasing products, with like the Pathfinder name, using the strict 3.5 rules. And then a couple of years later, they ended up releasing the actual Pathfinder rule set, like their actual own role-playing game. But looking back at that, like, and realizing that, I ran 2 of the 3 adventure paths, And part of the review series was relating some of the memories I had of like player actions or, player interactions with the campaign. So that's something that I wasn't going to be able to do with Savage Tide. And at first I was okay with it, like, years ago when I realized that I just wasn't going to get a chance to run that adventure path. I felt like I was okay with it. But as years have gone on and as I started looking at the Age of Worms stuff, it started to really feel like there was something missing, like there was a void, basically, that I needed to fill by finishing this last adventure path. So that's what I plan on doing, actually starting in just a couple of weeks' time from this. So this upcoming Sunday, I'm running a game, and then 2 weeks later, I'm going to be starting my Savage Tide game. And I was sort of looking through and trying to think about how I wanted to do it, because I don't think that I know that two of the players for sure really don't have much in the way of 3.5 books. So I didn't necessarily want to just have the door open to any 3.5 book, because the more stuff you introduce, the more things sort of get gummed up. And a third edition of 3.5 suffered from anything, it was bloat, like it was supplement bloat. So I think what I've decided on is I'm just going to run a strictly rules as written by the books D&D 3.5 game for the first time in nearly a decade. No house rules, no milestone advancement like calculating experience points, which is going to suck. I know it's going to suck, but calculating experience points, skill lists as written, magic resistance or spell resistance and damage reduction as written. But I want to actually run it just using the core rule books. And part of it is just to see how fun it might be to do that, because sometimes, the simplest approach is often the best. And again, as you introduce more elements, more things that are, written as years go on, they sort of can have an effect of creating like, imbalances and stuff like that within the rule set. So I just want to go with, for the player's handbook, and that's it. And like I said, run it super rules as written. So for the channel, to sort of complement that, what I was considering doing was to do a series of videos as sort of, I guess, like a DM's journal of my experiences preparing, relearning the D&D 3.5 game, and maybe going over some of the systems or mechanics that, aren't done anymore, or they're done differently in like the current editions. Going over stuff like crafting magic items, or not crafting them because I think that was a nightmare, but just, customizing magic weapons like armor and weapons and, stuff like that, and how you go about like designing a magical sword, for example, or how you go about improving a magical sword or armor, that kind of thing. And even, God help me, doing a video discussing how to calculate and award experience points for D&D 3.5. I will say that I think 3.5 was easier or simpler than 3.0, but I remember it still sucked. And it was something that I actually dropped long ago. Shackled City, I want to say I was using milestone advancement at that point, let alone for Age of Worms. But I'm looking forward to doing that, and give me some new videos to work on. And it's something that I'm just really, I find myself being more excited or enthusiastic about the idea than I ever thought possible. So it's going to be really interesting to actually go through and to give that a try. Now, the other thing is, because I'm going to be running the Savage Tide Adventure Path, it's going to give me the opportunity to do the reviews of each individual chapter once I wrap them up, while the memories are still fresh. Like when I did my Shackled City review, and especially now with the Age of Worms review, I'm reaching back like a decade or more to remember some of the things that happened in those games. And while there are certain events that will always stick with me, I find that it's harder and harder to remember some of the smaller, funnier moments that we may have had going through some of those adventures back in the day. So with this one, I'll actually be able to basically, as soon as I complete a chapter, I can actually move on to doing the review like that same night, or a night, or a couple days later, or something like that. But the memories will be fresh, and I'll be able to give a really good retelling of the events. And I think that'll be great, or at least I'm hoping it'll be great. The last thing when it comes to running this campaign is I need another player. At least one. D&D 3.5 is a system that was designed for a group of 4 players. Right now, I currently have 2 that are 100% on board with it, and I suspect the third player from the group will have no objections to trying it out. But D&D 3.5 was written for a group of 4 characters. Like most adventures will tell you. In fact, if we take a look here at Savage Tide, I'm almost positive that it will say that it was designed for. Well, this one might not have because they're brand new characters, but they'll say that, you know, like the adventure is designed for a group of 4 like level X characters. So here we go. So, you know, is Forgotten Realms Adventure, this is a different adventure. This isn't the Savage Tide one. But it's designed for a party of 4 9th level characters. So, like, the number 4 is, like, the party number in D&D 3.5. And I would like to have a 4th player if possible. So I'm leaving that open to someone watching this video. If you're interested in joining this campaign, and I want to stress that this is not a one-shot, this is not something that's going to be, you know, a short-term thing. This is a once-a-month game, so it'll be on a Sunday from noon, so 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's just a once-a-month thing. I can't, you know, I just can't really commit to more than that. Like, I've got a few different games going on that I'm running, but, you know, I don't want to drop any of those games to just run one. Like, I want to sort of keep stuff going as much as I can. So it's going to be just a once a month thing. And as, you know, adults with families and children and responsibilities, committing to like a weekly or bi-weekly game even can sometimes be difficult, but once a month should be a little bit easier to swing. So if you think that you'd be able to play a long-term D&D 3.5 campaign designed to go from level 1 all the way up to level 20. And you, as far as you know, because obviously things can change as time goes on, but at least for the time being, your Sundays are clear and you can do that once a month game. Let me know in the comments below and I'll try to pick someone, to join the game. Again, this isn't going to be a revolving door. I want someone that can actually, do their best to commit to the long-term game. Now, if you can't do that, I understand. I do also want to run a few one-shots or short-term games of 1 to 2 sessions at some point in the near future, so I will be announcing those. There's a Star Trek Adventures one that I want to do with that going forward, so that'll probably be something I'm going to announce. Sometime, I think, during the summer, actually, is when I want to run that. But anyway, but if you think you can commit to a long-term D&D 3.5 game, keeping in mind the only book available for characters is the Player's Handbook. No supplements, just the PHB. If you were interested in joining, let me know, and I'll do my best to try to add you to the group. I am willing to go up to 5 players if necessary. If there's enough interest, I might try to choose a couple. Depending on the situation, I could even be more open to sort of a revolving cast, because there are like locations that players will go back to. That's something we could sort of discuss or think about later on down the road. But for now, if you're interested in joining a long-term once-a-month game, on a Sunday from noon, 12 p.m. Eastern to 4 p.m. Eastern, let me know, and I'll be happy to try to add you to the group. Anyway, so yeah, I guess that's sort of the announcement. I guess you could say is sort of the justification or the thought process that's gone from me being someone who was done with 3.5 to someone who's suddenly thinking, you know what, I kind of want to do this again. And I don't know, sometimes I just like to get the thoughts out there because, as I've said before, this channel is just, an outlet for me to talk about things that I don't normally get a chance to discuss with people, because I don't have, like my gaming group like I used to, where we get together, every single week, and, maybe even during the week, people would pop in and we talk. It just doesn't happen anymore. I mean, obviously with the pandemic, that's not going to happen anyway, but it's just not the same as it was, all those years ago. So this channel really is an outlet for me to discuss these things. And that's why sometimes I ramble on in the videos, because I want to try to get as much of my thoughts out as I can, because I'll probably never get a chance to discuss them again. Some people really don't like that, and I understand, but this channel is made for me. It's not made for everybody else. If people like what I do, that's awesome. If they don't, I understand. But, this is a channel for me to sort of share my thoughts and just like have the one-sided conversation so I can sort of get it all out there and try to, sort through and make sense of things as time goes on, like, picking up an edition that you could have sworn you were done with. Anyway, thank you guys very much for watching. Let me know in the comments below, what are some of your favorite D&D 3.5 memories? Could be, the first, it could be like buying a book and reading through it, playing through an adventure, creating a character. Just let me know what your favorite 3.5 related memories are in the comment section below. I look really forward to reading them. As well, again, if you're interested in joining the game and you think you can commit to a long-term thing, let me know, and I'll try to keep in contact with people in the comment section. So thanks again, everyone, for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I'll see you next time. Take care.